What are your parents' names and occupations?
My dad's name was George Stillwell Justice, and I guess he worked a little bit doing everything, as far as, I don't know what you call it, like working in the cotton fields, and he worked in the orange and, apples and stuff like that fields, and we traveled a lot when I was a kid. Was always changing schools. Anyway, it was, I guess, a big adventure. So
And where was he from?
he was born in Oklahoma on the Indian reservation.
And your mother?
My mother, she was born in Florida, and her name was Flora Louise Justice, but everyone always called her Louise. They thought that was her first name, and it wasn't, but that's, what that was.
And where? And did she ever work or?
Well, she worked in the fields when she was younger, and then when she got older, she stayed at home.
Right. How many children were in your family?
There was 7 of us. There was 4 boys and 3 girls, and I was the youngest.
Okay. And what was your childhood like, and what kind of stories do you remember clearly about your childhood?
Well, like I said, we traveled a lot, and I remember we were in, I believe it was Idaho. I was young, about 2nd grade. Then we lived in this camp place with cabins and trailers, whatever. And they had a sawmill there, and they had a bunch of sawdust and whatever. And a bunch of us kids would go over there and play in that sawdust or whatever. I remember that.
Is there anything or kind of lessons you learned growing up that you'd want to pass on to your family? Or maybe your family's favorite just jokes or pranks or just anything that you would want to pass on to about your child? Like anything you learned growing up that you would want to pass on. You don't have to if there's nothing you can think of.
I would want to pass on, yeah. Well, one thing I always said is stay in one town and have your kids go to the same school their whole lives. So that's exactly what we did. Because I didn't like changing schools 3 or 4 times a year, It was hard.
Right. Okay. And do you have any like really funny family stories from when you were young, of you and your siblings maybe, or your family?
Oh, I have so many of them, it's unreal. It is really crazy. Yeah, me and my brother, Don. He's 5 years older than me. And we lived in California, Delhi, California, right out of Turlock, and that's where I was born, Turlock. And I went to school there, and there was a little subdivision, and there was houses, all around us, and all of us kids, we would catch the school bus to go to school, which was about 3 miles, I guess it was, out of town to the little town. It was real small. And anyway, and then on the weekends, this bunch of girls, I was about, I don't know how old I was, about 12, 13, I guess. And anyway, was living with my mom and dad. Different times I lived, from the time I was 11 years old, I started living with my oldest sister, Sissy, and her husband, Glenn, at that time. And then later on, I lived with Marianne and Wayne, her first husband. And then, I don't know, as years went by, whatever. And then we moved back to Phoenix. And so, I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, a bunch of us kids, there'd probably be about 6 of us probably, some boys and girls. We would get together and walk into town, Delhi, and we'd catch a bus to ride to, not school bus, but a regular, like Greyhound bus, whatever. and we would ride into Turlock and go to the movies. And that was a lot of fun time for us back then. And we would walk into, it was about every weekend. And we would go into the school place. And this old school, they had closed down. But I had a girlfriend that lived there, and her parents lived there too. And he watched over the school, like caretaker, whatever. But on the weekends, they had a camera projector, whatever, and they showed movies on this big screen that they had put up. And all the kids would go there on the weekends, and it cost 10 cents to get in to watch a movie. And we'd do that. That was a lot of fun.
All right.